2024 has given us some absolutely amazing superhero movies and TV shows and some terrible ones too, so here are the best and worst comic book movies and shows of the year. The fifth worst of the year, to nobody's surprise, is Kraven the Hunter. This movie has so many problems. First of all, the dialogue is just unbelievably cringeworthy through so much of this. Like, they are giving these great actors some of the worst lines to say that you've ever heard in your life. There's lots of terrible ADR where you can clearly tell the actors aren't saying it and they're just recording their lines in a booth like 5 years afterwards. I think the biggest problem I have with this movie is how much it spends on a young Kraven the Hunter and his origin story. Listen, you can get his origin story out of the way, but do it like in 10 minutes of the film or something. Don't spend like the first 40 minutes of the movie on a different actor playing young Kraven before he has any of the cool powers or abilities that we know him for. Aaron Taylor Johnson is why 90% of people went to see this movie, and I don't even think he's that great in the role just because, like I said, the writing is so bad. I think the Rhino, the villain of this movie, is actually the biggest victim of the terrible writing, though, because he has some of the worst lines I've heard since the villain of Madam Web. He is literally just a walking cringe machine. There are some redeeming qualities for this film, though. Like, I think the action sequences in the third act are a lot of fun, and there are some moments that are just so silly that you can't help but have a good time because of how dumb what you're watching is. For the fifth best, I want to give a quick honorable mention to Invincible Season 2. It's kind of weird because only the second half of this season came out in 2024, and this was definitely weaker than the first season. There were some really good moments, and the very final episode was super good, but ultimately this kind of just felt like filler building up to the big seasons 3 and 4, so it didn't make the list, but just barely missed it. Fifth best for me is Deadpool and Wolverine. Is this movie like some cinematic masterpiece? No, but I go into a Deadpool movie knowing exactly what I'm going to get. Not that great of a story, but a super entertaining film, and I don't think I've laughed at another movie as hard as I laughed at this film in theaters that first time watching. It was an absolute blast. I also thought Cassandra Nova, even though she's a little underutilized in the movie, I thought she was a super cool villain, and then a lot of her powers were really coolly showcased in the movie. And yeah, I do understand why people are cynical of this. It's pretty much just fan service and cameos the movie, but listen, I'm a fan of Marvel. I like seeing these cameos. It was super cool to see them, and I think they use the characters smartly. They actually have things to do and their own mini arcs in the film. They're not just cheap cameos. Fourth worst for me is Venom: The Last Dance. I know a lot of people really like this film, and I'm happy for you, but this was just so unbelievably dumb. It felt like just a barely coherent plot of just random scenes thrown together. There was not enough Venom for my own liking. We're focusing so much on so many brand new side characters they introduced for some reason. They introduced Nolan this and underused him. He literally has like 2 scenes where he's sitting on a toilet the entire movie, and instead we get to face these stupid faceless aliens that are not even characters. Their only trait is that they're invincible, which does not make them entertaining to watch. The first 2 Venom movies are dumb fun because the movies are kind of taking themselves somewhat serious and they're just goofy as a side product. I feel like this movie tried way too hard to be super goofy and make like clippable TikTok moments where it just had me rolling my eyes the entire runtime instead. One of the biggest disappointments of the year for me. Like I said, I was expecting to just have fun with this, and I really just did not enjoy pretty much any of it. Fourth best is Batman the Caped Crusader. This was a TV show earlier this year. If you missed it, because it kind of flew under the radar, I honestly didn't even know it was coming out, and then one day I just went on Prime and I was like, oh, I'll check out this new Batman show, and I absolutely fell in love with this thing. Just the style of animation and the music build up this version of Gotham City so perfectly, and I kind of love how this show feels like it's from the perspective of Gotham. Like, you're focusing more in on the villains and like the police commissioner and stuff like that, and Batman kind of just shows up, and I love that angle on the character. Plus, this has some of the most refreshing takes on Batman's iconic villains I've ever seen. Like, literally all of them are pretty much changed from how you've ever seen them before, and I loved it all. Third worst is the Echo TV series. I can't believe this was this year, but yeah, it was in January of 2024. That feels like so long ago. Honestly, it's blowing my mind. I just did not think this needed to exist, simply put. Like, I loved Echo's character in Hawkeye. She was an amazing supporting character, added a lot of depth into that show, in my opinion. But Marvel really had to start asking themselves, like, do these side characters in an already spin-off TV show need their own series? And the answer was so clearly no. We're actually focusing on her character and the dynamic between her and Kingpin. I was actually pretty interested in the show, but every time it tries to go away from that, focusing on like her family and stuff, it started feeling like a CW show and just lost me immediately. And the end of the show has such a cheesy and corny conclusion with some powers that are magically found that I just could not believe what I was watching. One of the most forgettable MCU and just superhero TV show projects I've ever seen in my life. I can't wait till 2025 when nobody ever thinks of this thing again. Third best is The Boys Season 4. Is this slightly a downgrade from The Incredible Season 3? Yeah, I think I'd agree with that take, but I feel like people are blowing out of proportion, like saying this, oh my god, it's a terrible season. No, this was still an absolutely amazing season of television. Multiple perfect episodes in this, like episode 4, 5 was incredible, and the finale was great. We get some of the best Homelander of the entire series. He's just absolutely unhinged throughout this entire season. This also served as being a great season on its own, while also getting me incredibly hyped for the big final season. So many things were set in motion in this. I honestly cannot wait to see the final season coming out, hopefully in 2026. I hope it doesn't get delayed, but this was an absolute blast of a season. Second worst is Joker Folie. It's almost crazy how much this movie has just fallen out of conversation completely because it was just that bad, and everybody felt disrespected by this movie, honestly, for just wasting their time compared to the first Joker that had so much buzz and conversation going for years after that's release, and this film had none of that buzz whatsoever. And somehow they squandered all of that with a sequel. The decision to make it a musical was already weird, but I was willing to give them a chance, and you can tell they weren't confident in that idea because when they do use songs, it's so weird and awkward in here. You can tell they cut out a lot of musical numbers, so when there is a musical number, it feels super out of place. And I'm sorry, this is just an absolutely stupid ending that thinks it's so unbelievably smart. The second best of the entire year for me was X-Men 97. This really just blew me away, and it really reignited my love for these X-Men characters in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. And I really like the X-Men live action movies, but the versions we get of them in this was so perfect, and I'm so glad they brought back all the original voice actors too. This show simply had some of the most epic moments and episodes of the entire year, like Gambit's sacrifice in Remember It is seriously one of the best just TV or movie moments of the entire year, straight up. But what really made this show work for me was all the different relationships and dynamics between the X-Men themselves. It was honestly just super captivating. All of that paired with some absolutely gorgeous animation that obviously takes a lot of notes from different anime was just a beautiful thing to watch, and I cannot wait for season 2 of this. So many great moments in this and great setups for the future. We all knew it was coming. Madam Web is the worst superhero movie or TV show of the year. This thing is just an absolute disaster. Dakota Johnson has absolutely no charm in the lead role of this. You can tell she doesn't want to be there. All the other Spider-Women literally don't become Spider-Women until a vision of the future in the last 10 seconds of the film. The villain of this film is absolutely terrible, and the editing is so wonky in this film that it honestly takes you out of any moment where you were even getting like 5% immersed, because it's impossible to get more invested in a Madam Web film. So glad this film is just done and gone, and we don't have to talk about it ever again after this year, hopefully, besides worst of the decade lists. But my pick for the #1 comic book movie or TV show of the year has to be The Penguin. There is not a single mediocre episode of this show. Everything was incredible from start to finish, with one of the best season finales I've ever seen in my life. Colin Farrell is giving his all in this acting performance. I still can't believe it's him, even when I see the videos of him getting all the prosthetics and makeup put on him, the voice, everything he's doing, he completely transforms into this character. Sophia Falcone is also incredible in this show, and honestly just as, if not more interesting than Oz. You got the tragedy of Vic this entire series, everything, watching him make all these decisions, and obviously what happens in the final episode. So tragic, but so beautifully done. Easily one of the best things I've seen in the last couple of years. A perfect 10 out of 10. 2025 is also looking pretty strong, starting with Superman. So click down below to watch my video about all the reasons Superman 2025 is going to be an amazing movie.